Hi there and welcome to this new video. In this video I want to talk about my experience, my journey with graphical environments in the context of Linux. So what is my experience? What has been my history with the different kind of options that Linux offers? Because Linux is a very rich operating system also in the aspect of customization, right? I mean, you can really like one thing that I really love about Linux is that it lets you configure the style, look, and feel of your computing experience, which is something extremely not trivial in this sort of like industrialized ecosystem that we live in today, where everything is custom made by big corporations, like Windows, Mac OS, this kind of operating system. They are designed for specific users and they do not give too much freedom to the end user. On the freedom aspect, macOS is probably the most like fixed one. With Windows, you can do some configuration. The problem with Windows is Microsoft that always try to put more advertisement within the operating system, and so that gets messy and ugly. You have to change a lot of registry keys. You have to do a lot of the bloating to make it work. I mean, you can do it, but it's a lot of work. And then we have Linux. Now, Linux can be considered hard for some people, but to be honest, when you work with technology, you're gonna deal with a computer 24/7, right? So taking some time, not even that much, to have a stable build does not really take too many hours of your day. Considering that you have to work with these technologies every day, if you work in technology, to be honest, I think that Linux just makes sense for someone who deals with this kind of stuff every day. For example, I work as a cybersecurity consultant, I do training activities as freelance, I always deal with technology, I'm always writing code, reading code, reviewing code, just creating content on technologies, and for my purposes, Linux is the best, right? So there's no comparison about that. Without even introducing the arguments of open source, freedom, and things of the sort. Now, when it comes to graphical environments, Linux has different choices. When I first started using Linux, I was using the classical graphical environments like GNOME, like KDE. I was kind of switching between them. As a distribution, I mostly use Arch Linux, like since the beginning, but in terms of graphical environments, I move between them. At some point, after a bunch of years actually, I discovered window tiling managers, and specifically I discovered i3, so i3wm, the window tiling manager that I'm using right now, right? And when I discovered someone else using this technology, I was like awakened. I thought like, holy shit, this is the way that computers are supposed to be used, because my approach is very minimalistic, right? I want a minimal approach to computing so that the only thing that has focus is the activity that I have to do, is the problem that I'm trying to solve. And I want my computer to be extremely minimal. This is, for example, why when I use Emacs, I have a simple shell, no option, no toolbar, no nothing. I have a simple shell, and this is exactly what I need every day, because everything else I can just access it with the Emacs command. So I want complexity, of course, but I want a minimal user experience. I want a minimal interface that allows me to focus on what matters. Now, I discovered i3 around I would say it was 2019. 2019, it was with the pandemic, with the COVID pandemic. I was at home from university. I started to look a lot of online stuff, and I discovered this kind of approach to dealing with graphics in a Linux environment. And I love it since the beginning. Now, I've stayed with this since the end of 2023. So it was like November 2023. So like this is my first i3 experience. It lasted really a lot of time, like 3 to 4 years. Then in November of 2023, a friend of mine started to use EXWM, which is the window tiling manager that uses Emacs, that uses Emacs as a window tiling manager. So it is an integration between Emacs and X11, right? Because all of these are window manager based on X11, the graphical server, one of the graphical options in Linux. And also you find Wayland, which is more recent, and maybe in the future we can discuss the differences between X11 and Wayland. Anyways, for this video, so like I switched to EXWM and I use it for pretty much 2 years at this point, right? I mean, I would say even more, like 2 years and a half, because now it's 2025 and I am back to i3wm. So I want to discuss why I've made this choice, the first transition and the second transition, just to talk a little bit about technology, right? Why did I make these choices? Now, the first transition, so I was really fine with i3wm, I love it, and you can see the first videos in my channel, here in English, they were with i3 because I started the channel in 2023. It's been 2 years since I'm up on this English channel as well. And in the first videos where I talk about OSCP, for example, I'm using i3. Then I switched to Emacs. Now, why did I switch to Emacs? First of all, because I was curious of the potential. I mean, I use Emacs every day. It is my tool of choice. I have a lot of workflows implemented with Emacs. Recently, I'm even trying to implement an HTTP proxy with Emacs, like something that would allow me to like interact with traffic, but this is still a work in progress, so like no spoiler on this, I'm gonna have more information in the future, but basically Emacs is an extremely powerful tool and it is my tool of choice, right? So why did I move from i3 to Emacs? To understand, okay, can Emacs be actually used as a tiling window manager? Can EXWM like be totally fine as a working environment, as a computing environment? And my answer to that is yes, totally. You can totally use Emacs as a window tiling manager, and there's no problem with that. Like things work, you can get work with that. And I also use it at work when I was employed as a consultant, and even when I was freelance, my first months as freelance, I use it as my work environment. So you have no regrets in that. I have no problem with that. Now, my issue with EXWM is just one. It does not handle Emacs sessions that are nested one with the other. Like, since EXWM means that your technology stack basically is you have X11, you have EXWM, but this thing is pretty much Emacs. So you have EXWM and then you have Emacs. And then you build applications like sort of like on top of Emacs with respect to the graphical element, right? I mean, the applications are not really on top of Emacs, but when they need to handle something with graphics, they actually talk to Emacs. So what is the idea? What is the problem with that? The problem with that is that in my workflow, sometimes I have to like close Emacs, I have to start new session of Emacs, I have to have multiple Emacs running at the same time. So in this sense, the fact that the system does not really integrate with multiple sessions of Emacs running at the same time created some problems for me. They created some friction in my work, and I did not like that. And so I went back to i3. I've been back with i3 since a few weeks, I think. I'm not sure if it's been a month, but definitely a few weeks. And so it's like back to the beginning, to be honest. It's like a very minimal environment, so I did not even lose any sort of knowledge on the matter. It's super minimal. The way I use it is extremely simple. And I've noticed since I've been back to i3 that it is slightly faster. And it is probably faster because, EXWM is written in Emacs Lisp while i3 is written in C. So I suspect this creates the difference in performance that I'm seeing. Also, lately I've switched to a new computer, and you can see from the spec, I've bought a framework laptop. I am testing it these days. I'm also using it as a work environment, and I'm finding it very well, but maybe in the future I can talk more about frameworks if you're interested. It's kind of a good tool, I would say, and I also like their repairability, like philosophy, the philosophy on repairability. So yeah, basically I've been back to i3. So at this point we can go and check out my i3 configuration. Disclaimer, this is nothing too crazy, it's pretty simple actually. So I have i3. Here I have the i3 blocks configuration. So this contains the various commands that I use to handle my i3 bar here, the blocks bar at the top, so very minimal. And here I have my config, my i3 config. So here I have the language set to Italian. These are like the basic default things, so really nothing too crazy in here. Some things I even have to change. I use the default settings, the default keybinds of i3, where to split a window, you use the modifier key, and then you do +H. Now the modifier key in my setup, I'm using, in the keyboard you have Control, then you have this like Win key, and then you have the Alt. And I use this one. I use this Meta key because it actually integrates with Emacs, right? Because with Emacs I use the Control and the Alt, and then in the middle there's this thing with which I use with i3. So I have Alt key, Window key plus H to have the horizontal, and then plus V to have the vertical split. Pretty fun with that. I have a bunch of different workspaces. Sometimes I use them, not too much, but sometimes I use them. I have the resize. I have the resize is binded to the default plus R. Here I have some colors that allow me to do that. Here is some configuration for the bar, the font, the position, the mode, and stuff like that. Here I have the various colors for the clients, focus and focus. The gaps, I'm actually not using it anymore, so I installed them. I had before the gaps, but to be honest, I think they just take too much. I think they just take too much space. So, for example, in this case, with the gaps here, it's like not that good, not that good. So he said that I have an error here. Why do I have an error here? What is wrong with this? Why should I have an error? Show errors. So it says duplicate key. Why does it say duplicate key? Full screen toggle. Duplicate keybind in config full screen toggle. Why does it say duplicate? What the fuck? Ah, okay, this is why I had to uncomment this. Okay, so here we even fix some errors, whatever. We don't care about that. So I had to uncomment this because with F, I actually do full screen. So yeah, you can just remove this because I don't care about that. So as I was saying, here I have the resize things, here I have some colors, here I have no gaps, so 0 gaps. Here sometimes I like to make the window to float. For example, here I was messing around with Chocolate Doom, and let's see where is Chocolate Doom. Chocolate Doom. Now, if I run, I think it's in build, right? It's in source. Yes, if I run Chocolate Doom, it's gonna actually, let's go into Chocolate. Okay, here I have no iWord file, so whatever. Maybe in Doom? No, maybe in just source, whatever. But sometimes I just, enable programs that automatically float, so that when I activate it, it's gonna float automatically. Here I have a simple wallpaper with fe, so a simple wallpaper, no rotation, just like a minimal. And here to do the keybinds, I'm using Scrot, but to be honest, I actually want to use a Flame Shot because I think it's better. It's less minimal, but it allows you to edit on the fly. And here I had to use the PCOM compositor. So basically the compositor is the thing that draws the shadows, the effects on the windows, and things of the sort. And basically that is the idea. And with respect to the i3 blocks config, not much here to say, to be honest. Like, it's pretty minimal. Here I just have the who am I, just here at the top, right here, and then the date, and then the various commands that are used. So it's pretty minimal. So having said that, this video concludes. I'm back to i3. I'm finding myself very, it's a nice environment. It's a nice computing environment to just mess around with the system. I really like Linux. I appreciate the freedom that it gives you to customize things. I still like EXWM, so I still like it. I still think it's a great choice if you are into Emacs and you want to use Emacs as a window manager. But my problem is that it doesn't work well when you have a lot of nested Emacs sessions, and I want to be able to create and destroy Emacs section on the fly, because I want to use Emacs for specific purposes. Like, let's say that I want to create an Emacs distribution for security testing, right? And maybe that has to be different from my normal Emacs. So since I want to run multiple Emacs, funnily enough, having Emacs as a tiling window manager actually does not really work well, in my opinion. If you have different opinions, of course, let me know down in the comments. Having said that, if you want to support my work, there is a Patreon. Thank you very much for the support. And if you're interested in security testing, I have a bunch of different courses. So in that case, go and check out links in the description. Thank you very much, and to the next video.